Hello, my name is Arya, and the plan today is actually to stream Metroid Dread. But before that, I intended on getting a bunch of things kind of off my chest, sort of. Um, some things I have spoken on before, other things I feel just I want to elaborate on a little bit better if I can. Also, hello, hi, Various. Thank you for tuning in. Um, the other things that I want to elaborate on in general, well, the big thing, the big topic right now for me, the thing that makes me want to like chill and talk like this and get all this off my chest in general is anxiety, right? And I'm not talking about nervousness. Not at your PC currently, but will be around in like 30. All right, cool. Hello, Aesthetic Realms. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks everyone for tuning in, for sure. But yes, the topic I want to talk about is anxiety, and I'm not talking about nervousness. I'm talking about the concept of, generally having outright mental disorders that can affect you physically. Some of which can, firmly put someone on the scale and spectrum of autism. It is a thing. And the problem that I have come to see the most is that a lot of people tend to make the mistake of hearing someone say they have anxiety over a situation, anxiety, and they immediately attribute it to fear. And one of the first things they feel like they want to do is tell the person, well, there's nothing to be afraid of, quote unquote. And the the weird thing about that is, you're not necessarily incorrect by telling this person that there's nothing to be afraid of. And they may even know this. They may. But their brain is not going to allow them to process that fact properly. Their brain may push back, force them mentally into a corner. And there is not a whole lot that they can do about that. And it will make them react in ways that, to a much more outgoing person, would be, well, illogical. And that's part of what anxiety is on the more serious scale. It's a lot more than just nervousness. It's a lot more than just a fear, right? Um, it can definitely shape the way that you interact with people as a whole. Um, whether it be friends, whether it be strangers, it can definitely force you into a sort of box mentally that you have to work to pull yourself out of daily, in order to interact correctly with various people. And it can be tough. It can be extremely tough. And it affects different people in different ways. Some people may only have, a little bit of anxiety to deal with, a little bit of it that can stop them from doing certain things that they may have set themselves on doing. It may be some of the usual mindset quirks of, well, what if I do this thing and no one cares, right? They may get thoughts like that, and that may make them go, well, I don't want to do this. That's a form of anxiety for some people. For others, it may be a lot deeper than that. They could very quickly find themselves overrun with thoughts in a social situation that makes them ascertain that everyone around them is judging them in some form or fashion. Or if they're not judging them, that they may not care about something that they're doing, something that they may have to say, and it can be rough. It can be extremely rough in a lot of ways, and it can certainly shape whether or not a person can even have the mindset necessary to deal with a given situation. Um, that's a big move from you. Plus, you had those thoughts all last week and you went to a bad place. Right, right, exactly. Like, it's, there is nothing worse than having those thoughts swarm your mind and you don't really have an out, right? You don't have an outlet when those thoughts start taking over. Partially because even if you're around friends, right? Because partially because you have to kind of self-internalize when that happens and try to center those thoughts as best you can. Um, some people have different methods. Some people use stress balls. Some people use, some people they breathe in and out slowly. Other people will kind of talk, mumble quickly to themselves. Um, I've seen and heard people deal with it like in various ways. And being around friends, you would think would be something that could help you out. But if they themselves don't exactly know how to deal with a person that is going through levels of anxiety, it can stack and make things feel worse. And they may not even know that. They may not know. They may not even be able to try to help, even if they may want to. Hello, Nettie. Let's see. You two are constantly worried about how others interpret you, even friends. Being told, quote, well, you shouldn't care what people think, doesn't help because you can't help caring. And then you start getting stressed and anxious about being judged for not being able to control it, and badness. Yes, that is something that can 100% happen. It sucks. It completely sucks. Um, yeah, like I said, friends, being around friends, it can definitely make the situation worse, even if that's not the intention, because they may not know precisely how to help you, right? Um, you could be going through an anxiety laden episode, like right in their vicinity, and if depending on how you deal, how you internalize it, how you push it outwardly, um, they may not be able to understand that this is something that is affecting you currently, right? And that sucks for you, and it sucks for them because now for them that's extra stuff that they have to take into account. Absolutely crippling. It makes you not want to do anything outside your own home, even. Yes, yes, that is a thing. Also, hello, Mary. Hopefully, you're having a good morning. Um, back on the note of friends, really quick though, like if you are in a situation with friends and they can't exactly tell, that you're in a given like mental state, you're in an anxious mental state and it needs to kind of be dealt with, and they don't know how to help with that, then they can inadvertently make it worse. And there is nothing, in my opinion at least, worse than that for someone that already has to deal with that kind of social anxiety and pressure, because it can then formulate into thoughts that say, I don't belong here. Quote, I shouldn't be here. My presence doesn't matter. And that is that can be absolutely draining mentally. It can definitely just kind of tear you down piece by piece, and it sucks. Here to reassure you both, like your company, and are both super cool. Thank you now, Neki. Appreciate that. Been hearing, you're exhausted, but work calls. Can still listen during these early minutes, though. Okay, I appreciate you tuning in. 100%. Thank you for that. Um, to give a personal example, right? And this is something that I have spoken with, several of my friends about. More recently, now Neki and Natalia, where I can find myself caught up in thoughts very often, where I am I'm with friends, and I could say it a million times. I would never in my life assume that they don't care about me. Never. Not a single day would ever go through my head where I would feel like my friends that I have come up to know for years simply do not care about me at all. But there are times where it can be difficult for me to pull their attention towards things that I may be interested in. Um, even if nothing's really going on in the chat in their vicinity, whether it's in person or online, it could be difficult to pull their attention to things that I have going on that interest me, right? And then after that, they'll get into their own thing. And once that happens, um, things can push further and further into the territory of, well, they're doing their own thing, and now this is where their attention is. This is where, everything else lies. And having the company is nice in and of itself. But sometimes you want, in a social situation, to be able to contribute to that social situation. And when you can't, it makes you feel awkward. That it just makes you feel more like, you know, what am I even doing here, right? You can have invasive thoughts that make you think, sometimes even aloud, like, are you boring them? Are you Does your presence matter to them? Because you're not contributing anything, right? Some friends can be understanding of this, and they would know that, hey, um, if you need just the company, that in and of itself is fine, and I will be here, right? Um, they can try to zero in on the fact that you are feeling anxious by kind of goading you out of your shell a little bit by talking about something that they know that you have interest in to get you talking more, right? And now your mind is pulling further and further away from those thoughts. Um, but this becomes infinitely more difficult when you find yourself in a situation where there are multiple people, even if you know all of them, even if you know all of those people present, right? If there are multiple people and they're all in a conversation and they're all doing things, whether they're doing things like together with each other or they're just doing their own things in general, right? Now, if you're someone who suffers from that anxiety, from, that kind of mental stress, mental strain in a social situation or otherwise, now you feel more like, how can I contribute? What is it that I can do to feel like I should be here. Um, and there is nothing that sucks more than that because at that point, what do you do? Especially if you're not into, the thing that everyone else is into. When that happens, you just kind of fall back into the background because you're just like, well, I have no reason to be here. They are, and don't get it wrong. Like sometimes that's just the nature of things, right? Multiple people being involved in like group conversation situations, it can just happen naturally that way. Not everybody's going to be into the same things, etc., right? But if you deal with social anxiety and stuff, that can be something that can very, very quickly burn out your quote unquote social battery. You know, you will find yourself having to back away and recharge. Get your thoughts together, get your head together, and then when you feel more up to it, you then you can come back. And depending on how exactly this affects you, it could take time. It could take a lot of time for you to recover. And again, the different people get affected by this in different ways, and it sucks. um, Being hyper vigilant is also just exhausting. Yes, yes, it can be. Um, Trying to keep yourself in the quote unquote on position, so to speak, right? Where you're just kind of trying to make yourself deal with the social situation in front of you. That can be very, very tiring, mentally and otherwise. It can be a pain. It can. Um, let's see. Mary says, as someone who's had social anxiety, it's gotten much better than earlier, but those moments definitely still happen. Like to excuse yourself from the group for a bit when that happens. Yeah, and that is definitely like, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Um, and in those cases, it can certainly help to be around people that you know when that happens. If you're already having invasive thoughts that make you concerned about like how the people around you feel, right? About things that you do, your approach to things, your reactions to things, right? If you're already having those kinds of invasive thoughts to begin with, it's not going to help you to be around people that don't know you all that well because they can very easily come under the misconception. Like, say if you're in a bad social situation and you feel like you're kind of in over your head and you need to back away and decompress. If that happens and you decide, all right, I need to get up and leave, and it's so like dire, it's weighing on your head so much that when you leave, you don't say anything, right? For you, this is the norm. This is natural for you. This is you backing away and saying, I need to actually take a step back and breathe. If you don't know these people in a personal manner, and this is like, say, maybe one of their first interactions with you, it can in turn make them feel like, well, you're just rude, right? And you don't want that, but it, that is why it's that much more imperative for people to be understanding, for people to think maybe they've got some things going on, and to ask, like, be sure to ask if someone's okay, if maybe they're going through something, because there could be any number of reasons they might have had to back away from a situation like that. And if it's sudden, you don't know what could be affecting them behind the scenes. So, if you're the person having to deal with it from the outside looking in, check on them. If, especially, yes, you want to consider them a friend, check on them, see how they're doing, be considerate about that. because learning of a person going through that kind of situation, it can definitely help strengthen a potential bond, because now you're forming, you know, trust between you and the person that's suffering from that anxiety, because now you're letting them know that they have someone that they can confide in, that they can trust to, you know, be concerned, that someone is there, someone is listening, and someone is trying to understand what it is they're feeling. Like even the tiniest of actions like that can mean a lot, like a lot to people. Um, and without that kind of outreach, whether it's from friends that you've known for a long time or people that you're only getting to know over a short period of time or whatever. Like without that kind of outreach, you could very easily box yourself in mentally all over again, and that is something that is extremely difficult to deal with, and it's not fun. It is not fun, you know. A nightmare situation, High Various says, is not being able to leave without drawing attention to yourself. Yeah, it can be, depending on who it is you're dealing with and how willing they are to try to understand. I have seen situations where someone who has like gone through a lot of mental stress, and was suffering from their own like mental disorders and everything. I've seen situations where people like that have left situations willingly to try to, you know, get themselves together and get get their minds in order and everything before they come back and can deal with the situation a little bit better. Um, they leave without saying anything to anybody, and to the people that are present that see this happen, they then turn and immediately start talking about how insert person is rude, insert person, it doesn't make sense for insert person to be afraid, etc., etc., etc. Well, and I would have to be the one in that situation to pull said person aside and say, well, they're going through this, this, and this, and because of this, this is, it's something that's weighing on their head, and they need time to breathe. They'll be back, and even if they're not back, like, someone should check on them. Someone should say something to let them know that, hey, it's okay. Um, and it has also happened to me. It's happened to me on multiple occasions, and it sucks. Um, it it can even happen if you're like, you know, you're online and you're in a group situation, a group chat situation. Um, so many things can be the triggers for anxiety to spike up, for your mind to just kind of go haywire. And it can come out of nowhere. It can hit you out of nowhere. It can settle in and then just kind of stick to your brain, so to speak. And depending on how exactly you deal with it, no one around you will know, right? And it's not fun. It's not fun at all. You've left groups when feeling bad. You always wonder if doing that, if you're pissing good people away in people's eyes, and that as to how bad things feel. Right, exactly. That you can definitely pull yourself into a worse mental situation, wondering how your approach can, affect the people around you. But that's why it's important, again, to, if you are on the outside looking in, to be caring enough to, at least, at the very least, ask that person, hey, is everything okay? You kind of pulled away suddenly, um, and it was pretty abrupt, you know. And I just wanted to make sure you were doing okay here, um, because that little action alone can be enough to let them know that, hey, these thoughts that you're having about your presence not mattering, about not being able to like be there and contribute anything in a social sense, these thoughts, that alone can help you fight those thoughts back, because you've been told by someone, hey, you know, your presence matters. um, you know, your thoughts, your time being around us matters, your company matters, and it can help a lot more than you think, right? So for someone to be going through it mentally, and they're kind of like falling to pieces internally and not trying to bother, they'll be like trying to shut themselves off and not trying to bother other people in that respect. And that's a big thing too. They don't want to weigh anyone else down with their problems. Um, but it's always a two-way street, you know. By no means is this a like put all the. It's not saying put all the responsibility on the shoulders of the person on the outside looking in. The person that is dealing with anxiety issues, the person that deals with, you know, social disorders, mental disorders, and things of that nature, if they're around someone and they feel like this person is someone they want to have as a friend, one of the most important things that they can do is tell that person that this is something that they deal with. This person may not always remember this. It could be something that slips their mind because, hey, everybody has lives they deal with, different people that they deal with, right? And different people that they deal with may deal with things in a very different manner. They may not have to deal with the concept of someone having these emotional or social issues or mental issues, so that when they do deal with someone that has it, they don't exactly remember or know how to recognize it and approach it. So, you know, you give a little bit of leeway because of that. If you can, if you can remember to keep that in the back of your mind, you know, and you're the person dealing with that anxiety, it can help too. Uh, but, you know, it's important to tell people if and when you can. And that's an important thing to distinguish too. If and when you can. Um, Now, Neki says, I never DM anyone, but if I ever catch anyone's vibes off, I'm gonna slide in there and care for you. This is not an offer, it's a threat. that's that's I mean, I welcome that myself personally. That's just me. You know, I I always appreciate it now, Neki, 100%. Um, but yeah, it's important for you to tell a person that this is the kind of mental baggage that I have holding me down, right? Uh, it it can be difficult, and I mentioned if and when you can, because some people don't want to tell anyone about these kinds of like mental issues, these social issues, because they may have had bad experiences. People are very keen for some reason or another to talk down to people that have mental disorders and things of that nature, without knowing exactly what it is this person's dealing with or how certain things can affect them. Um, it The world sucks. People in the world suck. I think that's the shortest way to put it. But yes, it can be something that can definitely weigh on people a lot more than it should in that sense. Um, so it's that much more important to tell people when you can, especially if you trust them. Hey, this is what I go through, and if they know, they would have that much more of a chance if they care, of course, to come to you and be like, "Hey, is everything okay? I know you said you were going through this, and I wanted to make sure everything was, all right with you." Um, so it's not a, "Hey, I want to put this all on someone else's shoulders." You definitely should not do that on either end. It's not one person's responsibility in a friendship to take all of that onto their shoulders. It's a two-way street. Um, but it can be crippling mentally to to deal with that sort of thing. Um, I myself have definitely dealt with my fair share of people who don't exactly understand what it is, certain people go through with mental issues, social issues, things of that nature, how their forms of anxiety affect them, and what it is they need to do to deal. Right? If you are on the outside looking in, and someone's going through social anxiety, mental anxiety, and all of the blocks, all of the foundations that they've built up to try to keep themselves stable, so to speak, are like crumbling underneath them. One of the worst things that you can do is attribute that anxiety, and I mentioned it earlier, but it's one of the worst things you can do is attribute that anxiety to fear and try to brush it under the rug by trying to tell them that they've got nothing to be afraid of. There is so much more than fear going on in their brain, so much more. And if it was as simple as "don't be afraid, TM," there'd be a lot of people not dealing with social and mental anxiety like this. It's just that simple. They just wouldn't. But it's not that simple. It's not as simple as just overcoming a fear. It can hit you, and when it does, it can definitely drag you down. Yeah, right. Now, Neki, exactly. The classic just block. Just block the mix up. Nah, you can't always block that mix up. And it sucks. uh, it's rough. What do you mean? Just don't be sad. Easy. Yeah. Yeah, those are the kinds of thoughts that people tend to hit people with, and it can be excessively aggravating to be encountered by that. To have someone brush that under the rug so simply. Let's see. Let's see. Want to do X, but I worry about this, that, and the other thing, and I can't get it out of my mind, and I always jump to the worst possible situation, and can't get past the anxiety it gives me, and then I just can't do anything for a few hours because I work myself up into a panic attack. Yeah, that can definitely happen. 100%. That can happen, and it sucks. It is. Ooh, it's rough. Just don't worry and do it, forehead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it is the worst. Um, it's one of the worst things you can do to someone who is dealing with anxiety issues and things of that nature. Absolutely, and I the reason that it hurts so much, it can be so like threatening to someone's mental condition, is because by you simply saying, hey, there's nothing to be afraid of, and then just kind of leaving it at that, you're not taking into account the why that person might be feeling this anxiety. You're not actively trying to understand where this person's problems are coming from. You talk to them, you ask them what it is that's on their mind. What is it that's currently weighing them down? Because it could be a number of things. It could be things having to do that are spilling over from life situations. It could be things having to do directly with, you. It could be things having to do with friends in the situation or around the situation. They could have any number of thoughts on their brain from really any point in the day. And it could just, it could weigh on their brain, and now you're in a situation, and again, the worst thing you can do is sweep it under the rug, or try to, because that's not helping you, and it's not helping them. That's just how it is. The number of times I've been told, quote, well, just do it anyway, stop worrying, is astounding, and it never has helped anything. It's made it worse every single time. Yeah, yeah, Natty, exactly. Um, it it's not that simple. For some people, it's like they could say, just just get up and do it, and it, it can be staggeringly hard, right? I myself can sit here and say that, hey, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I mean that, right? I mean that with all my heart and soul. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. It's part of why I'm here, doing this right now, having this talk session. But you can't always get up and do it immediately, right? For people with anxiety and whatnot, especially, they could get dragged down by their brain. And every time they consider, well, I'm going to get up and do X thing, that thing could have already weighed them down enough to where they feel like, well, I don't need to do this right now. And they could very much put it off until it simply doesn't matter anymore in their mind. And that's just, it's a shame. It's a shame. It's not a matter of procrastination. It's a matter of their brain telling them that this thing that they want to do simply wouldn't matter. And that sucks. Um Hear that from other people with anxiety too. Yeah, they just do it. Yeah. Um yeah, it absolutely sucks. Um you can 100% like push yourself out of doing something that you really want to do, because you can get caught up in thoughts of who would actually care about the fact that I'm doing this thing. And then from there, it could snowball into other thoughts of, hey, uh, I I had thoughts of doing insert thing. I didn't think anybody would care, so I didn't do it. But now that I didn't do it, now I feel even worse because I'm not contributing the thing that I wanted to contribute. It can snowball, and things can just fly completely off the handle from there, and it can be terrifying to deal with. Um, which is why it's also that much more important to um, try your best, and this can be hard to gauge, admittedly. That's why I said try your best, but try your best to surround yourself with people that you know will encourage the things that you do. Say if you're doing something that you feel is something you really want to do, that's important to you, right? Like someone could you could want to make a video, you could want to type out a guide, or you could want to work on a project for yourself, making some sort of outfit, or something, just anything that you feel is important to you. And if you have even one person around you that will look at that thing and be like, hey, I know you can do this. They're not being, you know, patronizing about it. They're not saying it just to make you feel better. Like, they legitimately feel like, hey, this thing you're doing is pretty cool. So do your best at doing this thing. I would actually look forward to seeing that. That can help so very much, so much more than people think. I myself, in the past year, have actually pulled myself away from an old friend group of mine. People that I have known for like years on years on years. Um, and it's not a matter of me not caring. It's a matter of me knowing that there is a conflict of general interests when it comes down to what it is they're into and what it is I care about. Some of them were exceedingly honest about the fact that the things that I am into, they don't find themselves into all that much, right? So, I mean, I appreciate the honesty. If nothing else, they were straightforward about it, and they told me, hey, this thing that this little niche that you're into is not my cup of tea, and that that's fine. I mean, everybody's got their own things that they're into, right? But for you to put your heart and soul forth into something repeatedly, time and time again, and to want to present it to these people because you feel like these people are close to you, right? And to get next to no reaction whatsoever from these people that you care about and you're showing this thing to, it it can be something that can build on your brain very negatively over time, because here you are, pouring your soul into something, and you want to show these people this thing that you've been working on for hours at a time, and to you it's a super important project, or it's pretty cool, etc., etc., and to them, they're just like, eh. Or worse, they tell you flat out that it's something that they just don't care about. And at that point, you feel like you've wasted their time. You feel like you've wasted their time, and if you feel like they don't care, why should anyone else care? Right? That's the kind of like mindset you can definitely fool yourself into, and it sucks. Let's see. That same thing happened to me as well, actually. There was a straw that broke the camel's back. Oh, that poor camel. But a lot of it was just growing apart, and then me deciding that it was finally a good time to just diverge completely. And that same phenomenon of just gushing and trying to be excited about something you care about and them not caring, it fucks with you over a lot of years. And it's gotten to the point where I apologized after 5 minutes of talking about a thing and just shut down. Yes, precisely. Um, it's not fun. You remember writing a lot of stories in a creative RP Discord, and it sucked. Having nobody noticing or caring much, and yeah, guess it wasn't their own thing, but that hits hard. Right. It stacks up over time, right? It stacks up over time, and the longer you have to deal with that as a concept, the more you start to feel like these things that you do don't matter. And that's not the thought you want rolling around in your head at all, right? which is why I say it's important to try your best to actually be around people that are willing to be legitimately supportive, who will like take interest in the thing that you're, passionate about. Um, Even if it's not to the same level of passion, if they show that kind of interest, right? It's amazing to like feel that and have that kind of like even attempted understanding. It's very very good for the mind. Um, it's super important. Seen it happen too. Just stop, apologize, and then not pick up the threat. Yes, yes, I have. That is precisely why, Natty, that when if I'm in a situation, right, where I feel like I don't have anything to contribute around certain people, um, I will speak up. I will make it known that I'm in the middle of a situation where I can't actually say anything here. I can't contribute anything here, right? Um, but I'm not going to stop anyone else from talking, from having their conversations. I don't. That's not my goal. My goal is simply to let people know, hey, if I go silent here, this is something that I am doing to kind of get myself together, to take a moment to breathe, back away from what's happening, get into my own thing, get into my own little bubble, so that my thoughts don't start crowding me. Um, and at that point, the people that you're telling this to have two options. They can either uh, respect that as a concept and give you your space in your bubble until you feel like you're ready to like come up and you have something to say, which that can help. Obviously they want to tell you first that yeah, they understand that you're backing away, right? Giving you a non-reaction is that's not good. um, uh, but option B is for them to tell you, hey, uh, we understand that this is something that you're not into. So, in the vein of shifting things to help you be more comfortable, we can either A, talk about something else, or B, uh, talk about something that is along the same lines of the topic, but something that is closer to home for you. Um, and that way you can pull the person in that is on the outside, that can't contribute to things. So there are ways, there are small ways like that that you can definitely help to help a person that deals with those kinds of anxiety and social issues uh, feel less excluded in those sorts of situations, right? Um, so no, I know 100% what you mean. I again, I've seen it happen. That's why I will go out of my way to make it known, to let people know, hey, I am going through it, TM. Please excuse me while I deal, or put it out there so that they know that this is a thing that's happening right now. Because that level of communication is very important. It's extremely important. It needs to be known by both sides exactly where everybody is, where who's got what cards on the table. Um, and there's more. There are more things that can contribute to a lot of anxiety, um, social and otherwise, right? Like some people, I mentioned earlier, some people could have had like just bad situations in life, and it could like lay on their brain. It could just stick to them and make it difficult for them to deal with situations in the future. Um, Something for me personally, I have always, and I mean always, had issues with various forms of dysphoria. I speak about my voice dysphoria specifically more than anything else, but like dysphoria in any form or fashion is something like a lot of it's hit me. Uh, at some point in time, I deal with it daily, and it sucks. I can't deal with the sound of my own voice. I do not like my voice. I hate it. So like actually actively talking like this in this lengthy a fashion, if it wasn't something that I felt like I needed to get off my chest and try to talk about uh, at length, I wouldn't be doing this. If I didn't feel like it was important, I wouldn't be doing this, which is why I'm excessively thankful that you all are here. You're talking, you're listening, you're responsive. It helps a lot, and I appreciate it. I appreciate every one of you. But like I said, there could be reasons for a lot of things. For me, my voice dysphoria, in particular, stems from uh, family-related traumas and issues brought on because I I won't mince any bones about it. My blood-related family kind of sucks. Uh, like I can talk about it with close friends at length, but my blood-related family kind of sucks. um, and part of said suckage is the fact that when I was like much younger, right? My voice was actually much softer in tone in a lot of ways, like naturally softer in tone. And I would imagine for some people that's saying a lot because I know some people that tell me that when I speak very softly, and I've heard people even say like when you speak, you sound like you're afraid to speak. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, sort of, like, kind of, kind of is a thing, right? Um, it's a mental barrier that I have to like get past pretty much every time I open my mouth. Um, Thank you for that, Mary. Much appreciated. Um, but like it comes down to like the way that family and whatnot reacted to me, in general, how they reacted to me, how they acted around me. Um, when I used to speak with that much softer tone, like I said, it was natural for me to speak in a much softer tone. Here was my mother, my older brother, some of my cousins, right? All of them consistently telling me that I should quote unquote put some bass in my voice, right? That me speaking that softly made me sound quote unquote funny, right? And that's getting into the territory of like standardized social norms that need to die in a fire. But you know, I dealt with a lot of you know verbal abuse, sometimes even physical abuse from my older brother, um, just because of the fact that I spoke a certain way. And just to avoid catching some of that, if at all possible, right? I did. I forcibly made myself speak with a deeper tone. And it just kind of stuck over the years. And like I said, I hate it. I hate it with every fiber of my being. Um, and that is part of something. It's part of what makes me that much more nervous about the concept of speaking. Because again, I feel all the time like I hate my voice. I hate the sound of my voice, and it's something that I I'm always like super conscious about. And I when I start speaking to someone, there's that always that thought of how do I sound to other people. I hate the sound of my voice, you know, myself. I hate the way I sound. So how does that sound to other people, right? So some of you may have seen it. Nah, I wish, Mary, but nah, I'm aware my voice carries a little more bass than I would like, and I'm acutely aware, and it sucks. But I do appreciate the I appreciate the encouragement. Appreciate and by no means like do I mean to make you any sort of jealous at all. I appreciate the kindness. I graciously accept the compliment. um, but yeah, I'm already going through thoughts myself, uh, self-directed thoughts of hey, I don't like my voice. I don't like the sound of my voice. I hate it, etc., etc. So what does it sound like to other people, right? Um, and that can in turn 100% neuter any and all concept of you speaking to anyone, to anyone, right? You can it unless you absolutely need to, you can just shut down. Um, Having that kind of stuff weigh on your brain and to have to fight through that every time you want to speak. So imagine like what it's like for someone like that to go, well, I have something I want to talk about. Imagine how daunting a prospect that is to have someone force themselves into a situation like that willingly, right? It can definitely be something where it's like it sucks because then you got to deal with like 6,000 other thoughts like will anyone care about what I have to say, will anyone be turned away by the sound of my voice, etc., etc., and it all gets stacked and it's not fun. But you know it's important, so here I am. For what it's worth, from the first time I heard you talk, I've only ever heard a woman's voice, so I appreciate that, Natty. It's important more than anything else, I think, to allow a person that goes through these kinds of mental hoops um, to approach things at their own pace, deal with things how they see fit. These are important things, but also if you care about that person, you know they're going through this, you know these are things that they deal with, it's just as important to show them that you care more than anything else because it it could be small things. It could just be checking on them. It could be every now and then asking them, how they're doing during their day. Um, it it can mean a world of difference to them to actually have someone care to that extent. Um, it, And that goes both ways. So, like, it's let's see. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. That reminds me, haven't asked you yet today. How are you today? Well, Natty. I'm doing okay. Right now, as you may have heard from me speaking on occasion, I am kind of fighting anxiety and just trying to speak. So, like, I'm here, I'm nervous, but I'm here. So, that's a thing. Winter, hello. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Uh, Metroid Dread is coming a little bit later. Right now, having a bit of a chat session. Been talking about uh, anxiety, social, mental anxieties, things of that nature, um, and how these sorts of things can affect people, um, and just in general, trying to vent some thoughts and put some things out into the ether to give people something to consider, something to think about, um, moving forward, so that they know, hey, if you're dealing with someone who's dealing with some of this, these are things to consider. These are things to maybe ask them, to talk about, to think about, etc., 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 to, like, you know, help both sides be better about communication about this sort of thing, so that people aren't just kind of left in the lurch to deal with things if they want to help someone in this kind of situation, right? It's always a matter of understanding and a matter of communication. These are important. We got your back. Thank you, now, Neki. See, you've been here listening as much as you can. Said it's very important, not only to give a voice to the voiceless, but to help us all better understand and support you. Oh, I appreciate it, Natty. Like I said, I appreciate everybody who's been here listening. Just trying my best to get all these thoughts out there. Because, like I said, I wasn't joking when I put out the tweet, like, last night, when I said, like, I have a lot that I want to try to talk about. For what it's worth, I've gotten a lot of it off of my chest. There's still a few things I want to address, but not too much longer now before Metroid Dread. So we're almost there. um, yeah, I mentioned before that I went through some family issues and whatnot that definitely it lowered my likelihood of being you know capably social, to be a way to put it there. um it lowered my likelihood of that, because if you're dealing with mental and mental, physical, and verbal abuse from people that are supposed to be unconditionally loving and caring towards you, if these people are treating you like this, for you basically trying to just be the way you naturally are, uh, obviously you're going to constantly have the thought in the back of your mind, well, what am I going to catch from other people, right? But what am I going to have to deal with from other people in that respect? And that can make things much more difficult than they ever need to be when it comes to trying to deal with a social situation. For a long time, because of abuse from those who are supposed to care, didn't believe in unconditional love. Right, right, exactly. It can stack, it can fall on you very, very quickly, and ooh, it can be rough. Gotta say, I relate to this hard. Got a friend in me? Well, hey, I appreciate it. I appreciate the support. Um, it was like, what do you do when when that's the case? When the people that you are supposed to uh, get unconditional support and respect from cannot and will not do that. When they instead lash out at you because of the perceptions that they have and how you don't fit those perceptions. That is one of the worst things you could ever go through. Ever. It absolutely sucks. And it can drive someone into some of the darkest holes in their mind. And it is not good. I have been there. I have actually been pushed to the point of attempting suicide at least once. And if it wasn't for my friends, I would not be here. That's literally plain and simple. That is just the case. Um, because I dealt with family that just didn't care, right? They came up themselves without a lot of affection in their lives and whatnot. So when it came down to, you know, showing it to someone else, it just wasn't gonna happen. And you can only fault them so much if they grew up in an environment where that wasn't provided to them. But it's one of those things at the same time where they should have the common decency to know that someone is not responding to what you're doing. They're not responding to what you're doing in the way that you would hope. You can't quote unquote toughen someone up with constant berating, constant belittlement. That's not how this works. You absolutely cannot, right? Um, like, if someone already has the mindset of like being able and willing to push back when someone is like pushing them, so to speak, then maybe, right? But not everyone has that mindset. Not everyone has that mental or physical capability. So, with that being the case, you have to keep in mind that if you're going to push someone with the, you know, expectation that eventually they'll get tired of this, so they'll do this. Yeah, and they're not doing that, you're wrong. Take a step back, reevaluate your approach because you are doing nothing but making it harder on both of you at that point. Um, my mom, my mother, as much as I adore her for the things that she was able to do for me, she and I are not on good terms. That's something I will put out into the ether. And part of that is because she was one of the ones that you know, she was one of the ones in the family that didn't come up with any kind of emotional support, any kind of affection really. This wasn't something that was natural for her. So to her, showing affection, showing support was the equivalent of giving her child some money and saying, "Do what you want to do with that." That's her quote unquote support. That's it. There was no sitting down and talking to come to an understanding about something. There was no, "Hey, what are you doing?" and what's actually going on with you. Like, what have you had going on? There's no interest in anything that her children were doing to any kind of degree, right? Um, there was none of that. None of that stuff that you would expect for to be natural in a family environment. Um, Instead, it was I see things this way. And because this is how I see things, if you're not adhering to my vision, then whatever you're saying or whatever you're doing doesn't matter. It was a my way or the highway mindset, to put it in the simplest terms. And let's see. Honestly, this happening to me just reinforces my resolution to be better when the time comes that I become a parent. From observation, if toughening someone up via berating does quote unquote work, it comes from a place of emotional trauma that sows resentment in the long run, and I just don't want that. Oof. Yeah. Right. Right. That's what I was about to get at, right? Like, for all of that, right? Like, that she would do or say, everything like that, like, I would catch a lot of flack for things that I wouldn't even understand. Um, I remember uh, very, very vividly on more than one occasion catching physical abuse because things would happen that were out of my control, and I would be put in a situation where she would want me to tell her exactly what happened. And then, upon hearing the absolute truth about the situation, she would react excessively negatively, and I would catch physical abuse because it wasn't the thing that she wanted to hear. Even if it was the absolute truth, it wasn't what she wanted. It wasn't the truth she wanted, right? So that just put me more in a situation where it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do when this is the reaction either way, positive, negative, whatever. Like, regardless of which way I turn, I'm going down a bad road, right? That's not good on either side. um Mary says, honestly, I don't think I'd be able to be a good parent with how my own parents treated me. Not that they were bad people or anything, but her parenting style didn't work with me, I don't think. I was just pushed a lot to do well because of my mental disabilities. She had a lot of times where if the situation doesn't go exactly as she wants, she'll get mad. Like one time, my mom hit me for my middle school counselor saying I had, quote, symptoms of depression. Yeah, I've dealt with that exact same thing. It, yeah, no, I 100% understand where you're coming from. Yeah, it, and that kind of stuff can stick with you for years, right? Um, it can shape the way that you deal with socially related situations. It can shape the way you deal with various people around you. It can give you trust issues for people in general, right? It's it's daunting to use just a decent term for it. It's daunting. It's mentally exhausting, and it is not ever a good thing to put someone in that kind of position, especially as a parent, when the person like in question is supposed to believe that you're supposed to be unequivocally willing to support them, to be understanding of them, and to try your best to be supportive of them, right? Um, it's it's not good at all. To double back, like just I'll give you a story. I'll give you a story. Um, there was once where I was at school me and a couple of friends that lived down the road from me. And we were waiting for the bus to pick us up from school so we can head home. Uh, the bus would sometimes be late. We would understand. It's not a problem, and we'd have to wait a little bit longer than usual, etc., etc. But one day, the bus simply didn't show up. It just didn't come at all. And we ended up staying at the school building for 2 hours beyond the point that we were supposed to have headed home. So, because we didn't have a way to, like, back then, Uber wasn't a thing, and we lived in this, backwater place and everything, so taxis and whatnot weren't like a thing. We were just kind of stuck. So we literally had to walk back home from school, like literally like across town. So we headed back, and I got home, and my mom was literally waiting at the door, like just standing in the door, just looking through the screen door as I was approaching the house. And I get in, and she is angry. I'm talking full on hornet's nest mad, right? Um and she's like, "Where have you been? Where have you been? What took you so long to get home?" And I'm not going to lie to her knowing that she's upset like this, of course. You know, I wasn't gonna lie to her to begin with, but knowing that she's angry, no. That if I was even considering covering my tracks, which I wasn't, but even if I had been considering it, knowing she was mad squashed all those thoughts, just gone, right? So I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna tell her the truth from the jump, and I tell her the exact situation. But here she was, so hysteric, so wrought with concern about where I could have been, what I could have been doing for 2 extra hours beyond the point of me coming home from school, right? That she had already formulated her own story in her head about where I could have been, what I could have been doing. And it didn't help matters that I came home with the friends that I did, because their parents were known drug dealers, right? Anybody who lived on that street knew that these people's parents were drug dealers. They themselves didn't have anything to do with drugs, but that didn't matter to her. She had already formulated the wrong assumption that I was out doing something with them that I had no business doing. And me telling her the legitimate story of, well, the bus was late. And we were waiting on the bus, and the bus didn't show up for like 2 hours. So we finally just made the decision to walk home, right? She assumed we were out those 2 hours doing anything else other than considering our options. So telling her the truth went nowhere. And I, as a result, was I took a beating. I was physically abused because she thought I was lying to her about this situation. To which point, I'm rolling a million miles a minute in my thoughts. I'm like, what possible reason would I have to lie to you about this? Right? And turns out, the friends that I walked home with, they were standing outside the house when this went down. They were standing outside the house. They heard the argument escalating and they decided not to get involved. They waited until it sounded like everything was calm and cool. And that's when they knocked on the door. That is when they knocked on the door. And they told her, hey, uh, they were telling you the truth. They were telling you the truth. This is what happened, and you don't need to be mad at them. They waited until everything was over, and I had already, been beaten and everything, and then they told her that hey, yeah, they were telling you the truth, and you know what? She didn't apologize about that. She did not apologize to me for that. She didn't apologize to me for that for 17 years. It took her 17 years to apologize for that. And that's one of many situations that went down like that because of how she, would immediately formulate her own thoughts and have it so stone set in her head that, it's her way or the highway, so to speak. Like, you're going to tell me what I want to hear. You're going to do the things that I want you to do. I'm going to see this the way I want to see it. And nothing less. Nothing less is accepted. So when something goes against that, I'm going to be mad. That was her deal. And it did nothing but continue to stack more and more mental baggage onto me as the years progressed. They went on, and it was just more and more, right? So it was rough. It was very rough. I like kids, and it probably should have been stated out loud from my experience. These friends are bad friends. Someone who lost a friend because people didn't want to help me for my situation. These friends are assholes. Right. Exactly. That's why I brought that up. Right? Like, it was certainly a situation where these people should have stepped forward. Uh, Listening in on everything, knowing what was happening. They should have stepped forward and been like, hey, they were telling you the truth. This, let's not let a situation happen. If we can avoid it, they were letting you know what actually happened, and please don't assume anything else. Right? So I understand the mindset of, letting other families deal with family issues as they may come. I actually get that. It's a very southern grown mentality, I would say. I've encountered it in like northern based states and stuff for sure, but I the vast majority of like people that I've seen that have had that mindset, they've come from the south. And to me, I'm sort of like, well, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and let a friend, be treated poorly, even if it's by like family and stuff. Like, if I feel like, my friend is being treated unfairly, even if it's by a parent or whatever, I'll stand up to their parent for them. And I have. I've done this for a couple of friends. I'm like, look, you need to back off. This thing that you're mad about, it's no. You need to calm down. You need to actively talk to this person instead of being mad and having your first reaction being jumping to I'm going to beat them senseless, because you know what? The only thing you're going to do by doing that, by having that reaction, is you're going to make them hate you. And I speak from experience. You're only going to make them hate you. You know, so it circles back around because, like I said, there could be a number of things that could make someone react, a specific way to something, and it sucks. It sucks. Um, ah, uh, yeah. There's just a lot. There's so much to consider when it comes down to anxiety and how you can deal with it, the things that can lead into it. But the key thing is to just always be considerate of people. Uh, always consider what it is that makes people react a certain way, what makes them feel a certain way, whether it's about themselves or about a situation that they're in. Please, please just consider what someone else is going through and try to be understanding. Oh, Mary, I knew coming in that this was a rough subject. It's why I kind of put the beacon out. Like, this is what I want to talk about today, right? I appreciate you being here and listening, and talking about some of your own experiences as well. Uh, very much appreciate that. I appreciate you being supportive, and this goes for everybody, really. I appreciate you being supportive. I appreciate you being willing to talk about your experiences as well, and just being here to listen, because that could be just as important as anything else. Um, and mm, you know, I don't want to. Yeah, I didn't want to bring anybody to like tears or anything like that. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to like kind of put understanding out there, but I get it. I do. Um, and it comes down to things hitting close to home for people. That can definitely affect you. Um, if anything, I I just hope that anyone that's been listening, anyone that could take the time to listen in the future, because I know this has like been an hour and a half of rambling. I think, I hope that it helps. It helps people understand that, hey, you're not by yourself in these sorts of situations with these sorts of emotions, with these sorts of feelings. Um, that other people are going through these things as well, dealing with them at their own pace, in their own way, and that they're willing to be supportive as well in regards to these kinds of things. Um, appreciate you talking about this and being able to overcome your fear to talk about it. It's nice to hear from someone else. That is the goal. Empathy and understanding are core values that more people should truly have. Yes. Yes. 100%. You should do more just chatting streams. You're awesome at it. I don't think I'm awesome at it, but you know, uh, I don't mind just kind of putting myself on a platform, so to speak, to to, talk if I feel like I have something to talk about. And this was something that I felt like, you know, I needed to talk about, especially since it was something where it was like I was going through this mentally. For some time now, I've been going through it mentally and just trying to deal in my own way. Um, so it's like, people that have been receptive to the concept of like being in my company, talking to me on the sides about things that I am, you know, that I am comfortable about, or anything like that. Like, oh, just anything like that that has helped me kind of push away from the bad thoughts. I appreciate it so much, so very much. I I adore you for being there for me, and I hope that my company in turn has provided something uh, something similar for you, that you have gotten some form of relief mentally or otherwise to help you get through things that you might be feeling. Um, because I don't feel like I, do enough for the people that I care about in that respect. I really don't. But I want to be there for the people that I care about. I want to be able to do something for them, if at all possible. And so as much as I have to fight that thought of I might not be doing anything for anybody, my presence doesn't matter, etc., etc. I hope still that I can contribute something to people in that respect. Because it's hard. It's hard. But for what it's worth, I want to let people know that I'm here and I care. It's why I go out of my way to. I'll leave an everyone post in my Discord to let people know on occasion, like, look, I'm here. I hope everybody has a good day. It may not mean a lot coming from me, especially if we don't speak on you know a, on a personal level, right? But I mean, if you're in my Discord, I feel like you're there because I think you're a cool person. Yeah, that's just 100%. That's just it. um, so a I hope that, like, my everyone tags don't bother people. That me saying to people that, hey, I appreciate your presence and I appreciate the things that you do, you being there. I hope that doesn't bother people. I have issues as well with just feeling like I bother people in general. Um, and it can stop me from actually approaching people to try to talk. That sucks. Um, like I said, anxiety can hit you in various ways, and that's one of them right there too. You can feel like you're a bother to someone, and then it can dissuade you from trying to talk to people who would legitimately be willing to be there with you and talk with you. So it's always a weird bit of like self deliberation, and hopefully you can be patient with me in that regard, because I do care and I do want to be there for people. It's difficult, and I have to fight a lot of mental stuff, but hey, I'm around. And sometimes, honestly, the best thing you could probably do in that regard is to talk to me. Like, I, it, just like I said before, where it comes down to, sometimes you should tell someone that you care and stuff. By the same token, like, if you want to talk to someone, um, talk to them. Like, and I know that it makes it sound simple, right? Because everyone goes through the whole mindset of maybe I'm bothering insert person. But you'd be amazed how many times I've been hit with, well, I didn't talk to you because I thought you were busy. Okay, you thought I was busy. How did you come to this conclusion? Because we don't talk like that, right? I'll tell you, my day to day, if I'm not hanging out with someone in particular, typically now Neki, because and thank you now Neki to the, like, from the bottom of my heart for that. If I'm not talking with someone, I'm deliberating on my own things on my own time, but I'm not busy, quote unquote. I'm here and I'm willing to talk, I'm willing to listen, I'm even willing to do stuff if you ask. You can just ask me if I'm busy. Ask me if I'm open to talk, if I'm open to listening. And I mean, yeah, the worst you'll get is I can't right now. That's it. I'll never ever just flat out tell you no unless I myself am in the worst of moods, the worst of mental states. So if you ever hear me respond to can we hang out or can we talk, etc., with a no, it's either because I'm in a really, really bad mental state or flat out I'm not comfortable dealing with you in particular. Because I'm not going to lie to anybody about something like that, right? That's just it. Um, so like, hey, if you ever feel like you want to talk or whatever else, just poke me, get at me, and even if I don't have much to say, I'm more than willing to listen. That is that is my approach, and like I said, that can help too because it's you showing that person that deals with that anxiety, with that kind of mental, those kinds of mental hangups. It's you showing that person that you care enough about their presence that you want to talk to them. You're making it very clear that you're there for them just as much as you would want someone to be there for you. And I think that's super important. So, like, do not be afraid to be the one to approach. A lot of people have this whole thing where they're always like, I'm not the one who's going to initiate all the time, etc., etc., etc. And I get that, right? But not everyone has it in their heads to initiate, and they that may be due to their social and mental anxieties stacking up on their brain. Even if you can tell them a million times, I'm not bothered by you, right? Like, you can tell them that, but your actions have to reflect that. They have to. It's why it's important to, check on them from time to time, to ask them, if you care, like, hey, what do you got going on? What have you been up to lately? Stuff like that, right? Because it plants that seed in their mind to let them know that, hey, you are actually interested in their well being. You're interested in what it is they have going on in their lives, in their day to day, and what they do and how they feel is important to you, right? It's not always a matter of you initiating, quote unquote. It's simple, like, caring for the person that you care about. And it's not even something that has to be an everyday sort of thing. It really doesn't. You can do it every now and then. Like I personally have someone that I know that checks on me once every week. She's in military, so like she constantly stays busy, like all the time. So it's excessively difficult for her to find time to really deal with people that she cares about. Um, but because of the nature of the tasks that she has to deal with and everything like that, you would consider that, hey, she probably wouldn't be able to find the time to talk to me. She's too busy, etc., etc., etc. But she finds the time every week to, if nothing else, come and say hi, come and check on me, ask what I'm doing, etc., etc., etc. And I never once have felt like she doesn't care about my well-being, because it's like, hey, you're busy, you got, you know, military stuff to do. I, so, hey, but you still find time in your busy schedule with all this going on to come and check on little old me. And to me, like that's massive, because uh, I don't know, I don't do anything for you. Like I can't hang out with you. I can't actively like be there for you physically or anything like that, right? But you still find it necessary to let me know that you care to that extent. And you know what? That's big. That's big in and of itself, right? So like it doesn't have to be a constant thing. As long as you can find the time to let someone that you care about know that you care, that by itself can be something that can definitely help their mind, help their mental state when they deal with anything really. So that's what I try to do with some of my like everyone messages directed at my Discord, to let people know like, hey, someone's here, someone cares. If you need to talk, if you need someone to listen, I'm here. I know you may not take me up on it, but I'm around. And the offer's on the table. So come to me if you need that, and I'll be here. Um, ooh. uh, yeah, yeah. I do think that I have probably probably said most of what I want to say. Uh, if there were other things, they're not leaping to mind right away. I think that's about it, though. I think maybe for the anxiety discussion, right? Just the TLDR is show that you care, because it's important, and be considerate. Be considerate of people that are going through, different levels of anxiety. Uh, be willing to talk to them, to ask them what it is they're going through, so that you have a better understanding. And do your best to, in being understanding, do your best to be considerate of why it is they do certain things, why it is they take certain approaches, because there's reasons. There's reasons for any and everything. And if you're quick to brush it off and say, well, hey, just do this, just get better at this, or you can just get up and do. No, it doesn't work that way for everybody, and that could definitely it could do more harm than good. So try your best to just be considerate and do what you can to actually be supportive, because they will appreciate that and you a lot more than you think. Uh, so I think that's about it, though. I think I've covered most everything that I want to cover. Uh, Thank you, Mary, and Aesthetic Realms, and Natalia, and now Nikki, and Winter. Uh, it, everybody who has been here to listen, um, to give their thoughts, to give their own stories, everything, everything. It's all very much appreciated. Um, and hopefully, hearing some of my dealings, some of my thoughts on this kind of stuff has helped you as well, in knowing that someone else is dealing with these sorts of things, that someone is willing to listen, to talk, um, and be there if necessary. And if you ever feel like you need to talk about anything that's weighing you down, um, you've got me on Twitter, you got me on Discord. Get at me. You know, if I can help at all, even if it's just through listening or whatever else, do that. I'm here. I'm more than willing to listen, uh, and I will support however I can. 100%. 100%. So, uh, yeah, I think that's about it. Now, Neki, you contribute a lot every day. I'll tell you that personally right now. Even you just being here, like I said, listening, that's big. But like, you are easily like one of my favorite friends. I'll say that very openly. We hang out, we watch stuff that has to do with like speed running and everything else like that. Like, we watch stuff that has to do with fighting games and platformers and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like all this, that's in my ballpark, and you take interest in a lot of things that are going on in that bubble, right? Um, and I am super super appreciative. I can pitch projects at you, and you're like, hey, uh, how can I help if I can, or you're like you're ready with suggestions if you have them in mind. Hey, you do a lot more than you think that you do, and it's so appreciated. It's so very appreciated. Thank you, legitimately. Right, right. Mary is 100% correct. um, yes. So that's why I just kind of put that out there. Like, no, you're fine. You do a lot more than you think that you do. So just want you to know that. So thank you. Um, I think that's about it. I've said that like 3 times, but I think that's about it for the anxiety related discussion. Again, hope it helps. Hope it gives people some groundwork to consider, some things to think about, and hope it lets people that are going through it TM. themselves, I hope it lets them know that someone else is there. They are listening, and they're not by themselves in this. Everybody's dealing in their own way, and even if it's just through listening, you know, they've got help. They've got people willing to try to be helpful. So hopefully that means something. You meant to this conversation. Just listen because your experiences with things are different. Don't want to be like, well, insert this, insert that. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I mean, you're there to listen, and now you have, more of an understanding from listening to these various things, right? That by itself is a lot. It's a lot more than other people are willing to do. I'll put that out there. Because you can have people that will say like, "Well, I'm listening," etc., 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 right? And then off the back of them, quote unquote, listening to what you have to say, one of their first reactions is to take your situation, immediately attribute it to something that they went through, and start talking about themselves, as opposed to talking about your situation as if it's the exact same thing when it's not. And that's something that a lot of people need to catch themselves on. Um, just because you feel like a specific situation can help you relate, it can definitely not help you relate. You could fall behind the curve on that really hard. Um, you're fine now, Nikki. You're fine, and it is very much appreciated. But yeah, no. Like I said, I've 100% dealt with people that have definitely like sat there, listened partially to someone who has needed to like get their thoughts out about something that is weighing on their mind, and then interrupt them and jump in very quickly because they're like, "Oh, well, I was in insert situation that I felt like was pretty similar." It's like, well, you didn't give them time to actually get their thoughts out. You didn't give them time to articulate themselves properly, and now, because you've shuffled their thoughts under the rug with your own, um, you have made them less inclined to speak about the things that are bothering them. And that can definitely, like, just, it can absolutely ruin the concept of wanting to be social for people. It happens more often in group related situations than one on one conversations, but it can certainly happen in a one on one conversation. Love your streams whenever I can catch them and always thought you were cool. Thank you, Aesthetic Realms. Thank you for that. Very much appreciated. And likewise, I don't get to catch your streams all that often anymore, and when I can, I think they're pretty cool. I think they're pretty chill. So, you know, uh, if you decide you want to stream, you should let me know because I'm not always like, you know, on Twitter actively, right? But if I know that someone's doing something, like feel free to tag me if you've got something going on, and I will, definitely be there at the soonest possible opportunity. So, like, you gotta let me know. I'm not gonna hover over your stuff obsessively or anything like that. So, you gotta let me know something. But I will be there if I do know. But yeah, no. Like I said, it can happen in a group situation, much more so than a one-on-one situation. You can very much be in a group, and it would be like, hey, I've got this on my mind, and you start talking about it, and then insert person jumps in with, well, I was in insert situation that was kind of similar to this, and this is, this made me feel this way, blah blah blah. And then because you're in a group situation, here comes everybody else with their thoughts, and there go the rest of your thoughts, shuffled under the rug, right? And that can make you feel less like they're trying to relate to you, and more like, well, screw my thoughts, right? um, it can suck to be in that kind of position. So have patience, have consideration, have understanding as best you can, to the best of your ability. Even in situations like that, give people room to talk, to give them time to articulate their thoughts, give them room to speak, so that by the time, it, you can be absolutely sure they have nothing else to say, then you can know what it is you probably need to say. You've listened to them completely, and maybe you have a stronger understanding now of what it is they're feeling. So when it does come time to actually speak about what you can relate on, now you have a much better idea, instead of jumping in when you feel something, you see something or hear something that you can latch on to, and it's just a tiny little bit of what they're feeling. You don't have a full understanding yet, and that can make them feel like, their thoughts and feelings don't really matter as much. So be careful about that. If at all possible, just consider that. Be very cautious. Um yeah, I've been rambling for 2 hours now. Literally 2 hours of talking. Um, I said I had a lot to say. I said I had a lot to say, and that was not a misnomer. There's gonna be a good bit to parse through. Um, for anybody who may want to look back on a VOD, I guess, or anybody who might happen to look at this on YouTube, there's just gonna be a lot to it, but hopefully it gives people stuff to think about. Um, yeah, it's I wouldn't say golden, but like I get it. I hope that this gives people something to consider, something to think about. That's all.